I'm going to ask you for like to raise your hand or a thumbs up. So for those of you who aren't using the screen and can't raise your hand, if you know how to use the reactions button on the Zoom screen, it will be on the bottom or it might be on the top if you have an iPad. You can use that when I ask you these questions. So first of all, I wanted to know, were any of you able to attend either day of our conference that we had a couple of weeks ago? Like raise your hand or put up your, no, you, Devorah. Okay, great. How many of you joined the village within the last year? Great. All right. So that's you, Anne. And then how many of you joined the village 2 or 3 years ago? A couple of you, Carol and Sally. And then did the rest of you joined 4, or in Lorraine too? Well, the rest of you joined 4 or more years ago. Great. And I was just checking the website, but I'm not quite sure how long have Villages of San Mateo. And I would say it could be any of the 3. You know, how long has there been a village in your county? How long? I'm thinking Dave might know.
We launched services in 2015.
Okay.
As Sequoia Village, and then Mid-Peninsula Village started a year later, and Village of the Coastside started a year later.
Okay, great.
We joined together. The first amalgamation was Sequoia Village and Mid-Peninsula Village. And then Village of the Coastside just joined into that umbrella organization in January. So
yeah, I noticed that. I think that's terrific that you're joining forces. Great. So then this is an open-ended question that maybe you raise your hand and Devorah, you could call on people. I just want to know what it is. What is something, or what are some things you love? Not just like, but love or really, really like about your village. So,
I saw Sue and then Carol.
I just love now being able to get together with my village friends. We went and go out for coffee or lunch or a dinner and just social interaction. I just love that.
Great. And which village are you part of? Which of the?
Oh, Village of the Coastside.
Okay, great. And who else? Devorah, raise your hand. Oh.
This is very simple, but I love the rides to the airport when we're traveling.
Great. Okay, or like, we could go from love to like. What are some things ways that you benefit? Dave, oh, sorry, Devorah, you're doing
that. That's okay. I see Dave, go ahead.
I think it's providing services that are difficult for people to arrange on their own, like rides to the doctor and shopping for them last year when the COVID restrictions were on. So it's generally helping people who would find it difficult to stay by themselves in their homes and be able to continue to do that.
Any last comment about what you really like? Yeah. You're on.
Oh, Elke, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, I'm with Sequoia Village, and over the years we had fantastic outings, and it was all arranged for us. We just had to go to the bus, and those who couldn't drive were picked up, And then we had the most wonderful outings. And I know Claire is planning again more outings, but unfortunately, because of COVID, we couldn't do it. But I really enjoyed those outings with everybody.
Great. Good. Well, I'm going to show you a couple slides, and then we'll talk some more. So let me do that. And let me go up to the top of the screen. Oh, okay. Good. Great. Okay. So, Village Movement California is the statewide coalition of villages. And right now we have 43 villages that are members of Village Movement California, and they reach 10,000 plus people, members, volunteers, family, friends, community. So we have a good number of people engaged, involved with villages in a lot of different ways across the state of California. And I want to say that we were formed around people started, some leaders of some of the older villages started meeting around 2015 to talk about how there needed to be a statewide organization, a coalition of villages that could really advocate in the broadest sense for the kind of communities that we have, and begin to really work at growing the number and the size of villages, deepening their impact, and ensuring their sustainability, because we know that the sustainability piece, whether it's getting new members, getting new volunteers, or raising the money to fund the operations, it's a really big job. And so Village Movement California was formed to kind of ask the questions, what are the strategies that we could pursue if all of the villages got together and we could present ourselves to the state of California, to the California Department of Aging, and to various healthcare providers and insurers, that by pooling our resources and our membership, our volunteers, our community, we could get some investment from businesses, healthcare, government that's really interested in supporting older adults to age well, to achieve optimal health, to live at home, to call 911 a lot less often, to stay out of the emergency room. I mean, all these things that we want for ourselves, policymakers and health insurers want for us as well. So came together, created Village Movement California. And I want to say that Villages of San Mateo have been very, very active in the development of Village Movement California. And Pat Brown, who's involved with Sequoia Village and is on the board of your organization, is a member of our board and was a member of the leadership team that formed Village Movement California. So I feel a very strong affinity with your village, your villages, and all of you. And I remember, I'm going to go off of share for a minute.
Village Movement California.
We had a big launch meeting in April of 2018, and I'm wondering if any of you were there. It was in Oakland at the California Endowment. There was a group of people from your hub. Anyway, the very next day, I went down to Villages of the Coast Side Judy Messias, who for me was just such an innovative leader and such a great champion of the villages, invited me, and my first social experience was down there. So it's just to say, I feel a connection with your village, your villages in particular. And I'm constantly asking Scott for his knowledge. I ask him for advice, and then Pat is constantly talking to Dave McClure. So we're connected, whether, this may be the first time that we've met, but I am connected to your village. So back to what we do. So one of the things I talk about is, or we like to talk about, is that villages are an infrastructure for social care. And I'm wondering if any of you have heard that term before, social care. I'm looking through. Well, social care is kind of a new, it's new terminology for something old and something that we know is very important. And it's what what the villages are based on. And that is that healthcare, optimal health and wellness happens not because of what happens in the doctor's office. That's a part of it, but it's a very small part of it. It's really about what happens at home and in the community, and whether people have the opportunity to be part of something larger than themselves, to be part of a community, whether people have the opportunity to be physically active, like these hikes that you do, transportation to all kinds of very important activities, including the doctors, but also travel. It's those everyday building blocks that keep people healthy. During COVID, were you getting groceries? Were you getting your medicine delivered? Is there someone you can call? Has someone come to your house to see that the small rugs are taken up or tacked down so that you don't fall? All of those things are called social care. And doctors increasingly in healthcare systems and insurance companies increasingly see that that's a really important part of wellness for older adults. And they're actually starting to pay for it. So, and we're saying, well, we do this every day. We're an infrastructure for social care. We reach 10,000 people. You should invest in us. So that's part of what my job is as the director of the statewide movement. Another thing we like to talk about is that villages really are an antidote for social isolation and loneliness. And I think most of you have read or heard or talked about this epidemic of social isolation and loneliness that is an epidemic across the country. And the two groups of people who are most impacted are young people, like in their early 20s, and older people. And more villages are starting to put those groups together and create an intergenerational community. But we do a lot around this social isolation problem because we invite people into our communities. And making friendly calls and visit porch visits and getting people on Zoom and all of those things that you and many of the villages did during COVID are that antidote for social isolation. And what we know is that when people are connected, when people have what we call social integration, when they're part of a community, part of a neighborhood, when they feel like they're part of a group, and when they have somebody to call if something goes wrong, or if they want to share a joy, those are the two things that contribute to longevity. So this great researcher, Dr. Julia Holt-Lundstad, has done a lot of research around wellness and longevity. And what she's found is that community and having connection is more important than quitting smoking. So we do our work understanding our foundation and understanding what it is that we contribute to people's lives and to the communities in which the village operates. And then the last thing that I'll talk about in just a minute is that villages are included in the California Master Plan for Aging. And I'm wondering if you know about the master plan. Have you heard about it? Okay. So the Governor Newsom, when he came into office, said we need a master plan for aging. Every day, thousands of older adults in California turn 65. Our fastest growing population in California are people who are turning 85 and older. And we need to be ready to embrace our older folks, to both engage them in our state and in solving big problems, and in also providing the kinds of supports that people are going to need to age, particularly to stay in charge and to be at home as long as possible. So big statewide process, 2 years, just thousands of people involved, meetings, opportunities for input, a whole huge roadmap. And villages were included, and we worked really hard to be included. So there's a goal that the state will be working with us to implement over the next 2 years, and that's to promote and adapt the village model of volunteerism and services to reflect the strengths of California's diverse communities. And I really love the way that that was written, because it validates the way that we work with people. We're not social service agencies. We are very consumer driven. We put ourselves, older adults, members and volunteers at the center of our communities, in governance, in planning, in leading programs. We are really dedicated to people continuing to learn and grow as people. We certainly don't think that once you turn 65, you drop out and like everything's done. We're like, no, we continue to grow, change, and have a lot to contribute. So the state sees that and sees that we have something to offer. And they're asking us to adapt the model so that we can serve many, many, many more people. And we've tended to be very successful in middle, moderate, professional communities of largely white people. That I think is because our model comes from Beacon Hill, which is an affluent white community in Boston. And there are a lot of other communities in California, the Latino community, Asian, that are either already doing village-like things or could really benefit from the village model. So we need to go out there and ask that question. What is it that your community needs? How could we work together? And I know that your village, your board has been talking about that. And I'll be meeting with one of your leaders and the executive director of one of the aging agencies in San Mateo that serves, a range of racial and ethnic groups, to talk about how could Villages of San Mateo as a hub and spoke model, as a model of many villages join Villages of San Mateo. How can we start to adapt the model? So that's the master plan. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. There are 5 goals. I can follow up this presentation with some links to the master plan. There are 5 goals. It's housing, healthcare, social connection, caregiving, and like economic well-being, including the prevention of abuse and fiscal abuse. So there's 5 goals, and it's quite ambitious, and it is designed to spur investment by the state, by local government, by businesses, and by philanthropy. So with villages being in the master plan, there's a real opportunity that we can open up some funding sources that have not been available to us yet. So I'm going to pause a minute because I've said a lot. And I'm just wondering if you have any questions about what I just talked about with this master plan. Any questions or comments about that? No? Okay. Okay, so let's see. So this is our the map of villages. It's mostly accurate. There are a few things. There are a few dots that aren't correct, but this is basically our villages. This is a lot of villages. So you are part of something very big that's statewide. And we're going to keep adding black dots to this map. And I just talked to you about the master plan for aging. We're in goal 3, inclusion and equity, not isolation. And under the strategy, we'll have opportunities for work, volunteering, engagement, and leadership, and be protected from isolation and discrimination. So much of the aging services system is made up of like these services that are very hierarchical and see the older adult as the receiver of services, not as the co-creator or the leader. And what we do is the leadership, the co-creator. We're really giving people opportunities for meaningful engagement. So this is one of our, this is our vision. We envision a society where all stages of life offer meaningful opportunities for growth, connection, and joy, where people of all backgrounds and economic means can age with dignity, purpose, and self-determination. And we have a lovely website, and there's a lot of really great language on the website and in the About Us part of the website that we've encouraged our villages to use. We have that kind of we're an open system kind of a culture where people borrow from each other. And we have lots of, I think, really great language about what we do. So that's on our website. Oh, let's see. Right, so here's my name, my phone number, my email, and our website. And let me copy. No, can I do that? I'll copy that and put that in the chat. So we're very, very focused right now on this, this endeavor to promote and adapt the village model. And in fact, I've been talking with people in 6 different counties about starting new villages. And I'm also talking to current villages about expanding. And so I really like the model that you have in San Mateo County, which is that, you come together, you have your own network of villages, you do a lot of kind of administration and governance and a lot of things together, so that then what takes place in the individual villages are the activities that you get to do together. And we're really interested in learning about how we take steps to include more and more older adults and more older adults who might happen to, have immigrated to the United States, for example. Foster City Village has a lot of Chinese, Foster City, the city, has a lot of Chinese residents who are immigrants. Foster City Villages has some, but they would like to do more. So they're going to learn about that. How can they do that? So if you sign up for our newsletter, and if you look at our website, you'll just read, articles, and there are resources for these things that I'm talking about in terms of where we're going. So we're really trying to support the villages to do their best job, to bring in resources for them, so that we can all move forward together as a movement, because we have, just looking at this, most of the people who are members of villages are Medicare recipients. So they've worked at some point in their lives and they are eligible for Medicare. They might also be getting some Medicaid, but mostly Medicare. So that's the middle moderate income group. There are 4.5 million people right now who are in California who are receiving Medicare. And that includes people who get Medicare and Medicaid. So, those are our people. They're rich, and so they can't just buy their way out of the aging dilemma. And they're not poor. They're not eligible for these in-home support services, but they're kind of on their own. So we're trying to build communities so that people are not alone. People can learn from each other and have a good time, and stay out of the hospital and put off a move to, an independent living place or nursing home. So that's what we're about. We're like your infrastructure, trying to hold you and grow you and move you along. We just had a conference, and one of the great things about the conference was that we had a lot of people across the state connecting with each other. And we do try to do that every so often, is through Zoom, is give villages across the state, village members, an opportunity to connect with each other. I am going to tell you about the next step. It's something that I want you to think about doing this summer, but I did want to pause and hear about your thoughts about what I said or your questions.
Does anyone have questions?
Is it? And we're looking for people to help. I'm always looking for people to help me with programs, social media. There's lots of volunteer opportunities if you like that big picture kind of thing.
Charlotte, I'm curious to know what it's been like for you of when you decided to take this bigger role and help launch this movement. What has been surprising for you along the way? What's been easier? What's been more challenging? Tell us about some of that journey.
Well, so speaking personally, I have an MSW. I went to social work school in the mid 80s. So it's been almost, 30. I think I graduated from social work school 35 years ago, 1986. And I've always worked in kind of community-based services and policy. I was a community organizer. I worked in public health. I've always done community building. I didn't go the medical social worker or the clinical social worker route. And I've worked for lifespan. So in my first job out of social work school, I worked in a public housing development and we started a preschool. And I learned all about preschool and early childhood development and worked a lot with families and young kids. Then we worked with, and then I did a whole 10 years of my career working with adolescents and young adults. and then worked with adult communities of adults. And now I'm working in the older adult span of life, which mirrors my own aging process. I'm 62. And I'm very curious about aging and about learning about aging. And when I was 50, I joined AARP because I did not want to be in denial around aging. You know, it's like, I got to just really take this bull by the horns. So, I'm really happy to be working in the field of aging and learning a lot about it. And my parents are 88 and 89, and I've learned, and they live in Virginia, and I've learned a lot about how to be helpful to them. And I used to be really afraid of their aging and of their decline, you know, because my mother's mobility is less, and, you know, should my father drive? I don't know. But I don't feel afraid. And so I think that working in the Village Movement has given me a lot of knowledge and skills and courage, and also incredible inspiration. I mean, I have met so many of you who are really aging with your eyes wide open, with optimism, navigating challenges, and living full lives. And so I feel inspired pretty much every day. So that's some of the like personal satisfaction from an emotional, personal, psychological, emotional side. I think, you know, I mean, it's a lot of work to start a new organization, but that's the kind of work I like. So there, you know, there are things that are hard about it, but, you know, I think one thing that's been hard is just people don't know about villages, and trying to explain it and trying to get the word out. So that's something that I've had to work on, and we'd like to put more resources behind. And then in terms of what's not so hard, I've had this very powerful experience since the master plan came out with the village objective, the village goal, where I feel like I'm being introduced to people. Resources are just starting to come in terms of, you know, here's a powerful person. Here's a way you can get involved. Here's a grant opportunity. So I do think our time has come as a movement, and that we're going to see a lot of growth in the next, I'd say 2 to 5 years. So those are some of my answers. Yeah. The date.
We have been unsuccessful so far in trying to encourage villages to be formed in the north part of San Mateo County and the south part. And almost always it takes some community people who are really dedicated to the process of starting a village, but we haven't been able to uncover those people who are willing to sustain the effort during maybe up to a 2-year startup process. So do you have any ideas on how to find the key people to?
Yeah, one of the things that we're talking a lot about, and actually Village to Village Network is as well, which is looking for, I'm just going to use a kind of jargony word, you know, assets, particularly organizations or networks that might be interested in getting involved in a village. So the traditional model has been that very grassroots model where a few people come together and then they bring in more and more people. And we're wondering how we might connect with more organizations or the AAA or churches to see if there's something in place already to build off of, because I do think it's hard to do this this grassroots organizing. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And so when I think about the people who've called recently to talk about starting villages, there's a group of people in Stockton, San Joaquin County, based out of the community health program of Dignity Health and St. Joseph's Hospital. So they're hosting a meeting in a couple of weeks. There's a group up in Sonoma County, a Care Partners organization. They're interested in saying, you know, we're working a lot with caregivers and care partners, and we think adding a village component is a good idea. So we're going to look at that. Yolo County, I'm working with Yolo Healthy Aging Alliance. So it might be finding those groups, and maybe I imagine you know who they are and you've tried already, but that's something that those are some things we're doing. The existing organizations, you know, do they want this engagement piece? Do they want this supports piece?
Charlotte, coming into the organization, I started as a volunteer, and then Victoria, one of our leaders of Sequoia Village, realized I had this nonprofit background, and the Village of San Mateo had an opening and said, oh, you should come on board. And so I've looked at the organization really as an outsider looking in, and I have really been impressed with the structure of how the committees have been formed, how the volunteers are really well organized and trained and passionate. And I think that there's a lot of good learning. I'm wondering if between the Village to Village Network and Village Movement California, if you guys have talked about maybe having like tutorials and videos, modules, so that people can replicate this model easily. I don't know if that already exists, but it just...
No. Yeah. I know that's what Village to Village Network has had, a mentor program, and they have a toolkit. And then through a grant I have right now, I'm working on developing some sort of outline for starting new villages using more of this network strategy, organizational strategy. And just from talking with a bunch of people in the last week, it's become really clear that we need to have that kind of capacity. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about like an incubator. And so we're thinking that the state could fund that. Here the state has all these older people potentially isolated, potentially going to spend down their assets to get into Medicaid. And they are worried about those people, and we have a solution. So we're gonna be fleshing that out. Like, what would that look like? And then try to get some money for it. So you're absolutely right. And I love the video idea.
And I don't know that much about the Avenidas model, but we had a table at the farmer's market the other day, and when my son pulled someone over from to say, do you want to learn about, Village of San Mateo? And she said, I know about you guys. I work at Avenidas. And then I just learned a little bit more. They have an interesting model where they're using more corporate and, for-profit type ventures to add more capacity, I guess. That was in a short conversation I had with her, but that's an interesting idea too. I don't want to lose all of the great strength of our organization that's built on volunteers, but I do wonder if we're trying to build up and, grow capacity at such a big rate, it's hard to do that if people don't have a knowledge of the organization, and we're quickly trying to bring people in to support the organization as volunteers. So I'm wondering if you guys have looked at that model.
Well, what I understand about Avenidas is that, it is based in the agency, the senior serving agency, and they have a very particular territory, which does include some of southern San Mateo County. And because I was talking with one of the board members of Avenidas a couple of days ago, wondering if they would expand into southern Santa Clara County, because there's someone in Cupertino that's really ready to go to start something down there. I remember reading, and I'm, take this with a grain of salt, that they had what they call the concierge model, which is you can call in and they'll refer you to a provider that you then pay for. It's more the very, very traditional Beacon Hill model. And I think what's evolved in California is more of a volunteer-based community of people who are helping each other out. Having said that, one of the things that I've been doing is trying to, I think that villages always need to continue to network themselves into the aging services continuum. So so that they have a lot of partners. And I've been working on that specifically around the Alzheimer's Association and the care resource centers. But I think, and I look at a village like San Francisco Village, which has been around for 12 years, and they have a substantial investment from AAA. So they've got a certain set of resources and history that we could all aspire to. But they have a lot of agency partners, a lot of people know about the village, have a stake in the village, get to know. I think programming through their programs, they meet a lot of organizations that could potentially help them. But Avenidas is different from most villages. I mean, it's like they're very unique. Hotel Oakland is unique because it's in a low-income housing, HUD housing development of low-income Asian, mostly Chinese, older adults, low-income. You're a hub and spoke. Humboldt is, Westside Pacific Villages is, Marin. I'd say Ashby Village is expanding. I'd say there are 5 or 6 villages like yours in the state. I think you have a real good model. I'd like to see more villages try to expand to serve more areas of their county.
Any other questions or comments people have about our village compared to others, or any interesting things going on in the movement? I will say from the conference, I got to meet some interesting people in Southern California, and there was a lot of good programs that certain villages are running. Some really interesting intergenerational programming, performance-based programs, and I think there's a lot of good sharing that can happen. And so I was glad that, and I see Scott's joined us. Hi, Scott.
Yeah. One of the topics that came up at the conference, I don't know if it was in the large group or a small group, but it came up again yesterday, is villages opening up their programs to other villages. And I know that Ashby Village has done a lot of that. And there was another village that said, yeah, we'd love to share some of our programming. So one of the things I can offer is that through our newsletter and through our platform, we have about 800 people in our newsletter, and our connections with the villages. We can, if you have a program that you really love and you want to ask more people to come, you can do that. And likewise, you can look. We're looking to see if do villages want that. Because there's a way in which this kind of economy of scale, somebody could have a great program and many people could benefit from it. Sometimes villages want to have a smaller program just for themselves. So there's a range of things, but that's something that Village Movement California could take an active part of.
That's good.
So this is what I need you to do this summer. And I just sent out the newsletter, and it's in the newsletter. It's in like 3 different places of the newsletter, which is that I would like for you to meet with your senator and your assembly member your state senator, who I think is Josh Becker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Meet with him and meet with Kevin Mullen in the next 2 months. Because we've got, and have you already met with them? Do they know about you?
They do. What would our message be, Charlotte? I'm sorry, you probably already.
No, we're developing that, which is villages are in the master plan. We're part of a statewide movement. We're all working to promote and adapt this model. We want you to know about this great work that we're doing. And then you could tell whatever update or whatever stories you want to tell about your own village. So we're doing, I'm working with one of our board members and who does a lot of state advocacy. And we're going to be running a workshop on July 28th, how to meet with your state legislators. We're going to have an updated fact sheet, some speaking points, and some other things to help make it easy. But we're going to ask villages to have, 20 to 30 minute meeting. It doesn't have to be a long meeting. And we're not asking, at this point, Village Movement California isn't asking for anything. But for us, we need to position ourselves with the legislators. The governor and the California Department of Aging know about us. So now we need all of our legislators to know about us. So it's great that you already know them and they know you. I was in a meeting with Kevin Mullen in May, and it's interesting. He's an old friend of Kate Hopkins, who is the chairperson of Village Movement California, the director of San Francisco Village. But that's my big ask for the next few months, is that all of our villages meet with their legislator, their assembly member or their senator. If they can't get a meeting with the person himself, an aide is fine also, but they will be on recess starting like next week for an entire month. So they will not be meeting at the Capitol. And traditionally, mid-June to mid-August, they have a lot of community meetings. So look for that. Look at all the information is in the newsletter. And for those of you who aren't signed up for our newsletter and want to be on the newsletter, and that's completely up to you, here's the website. And there's a sign up link. You can easily sign up to get on the newsletter. And then here is my contact information. I love talking with village members. Anything else?
Yes, that's it. I would encourage everybody to look at some of the upcoming meetings. I just quickly perused the newsletter. There's a lot of good information in Charlotte's newsletter. And there are some really interesting workshops coming up that I think would benefit us. So keep an eye out for those.
They're all free.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me.